Welcome to Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where you'll hear from industry leaders in science, technology, and innovation about the power of strategic storytelling. With decades of experience, our guests will share their own insights and real-world stories to help you avoid red light barriers and ignite green light solutions, from the Zoom room to the boardroom. In each episode, we'll corkscrew downward into the guests' personal experiences of challenge and success, highlighting strategies that turn complex ideas into clear, compelling storylines for stakeholders. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately to drive the vision of innovation with your team. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately that drive the vision of innovation with your team. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Red Light, Green Light. I'm your host, Cindy Skalicky, and I'm so happy to have all of you here with me today. I've brought you another incredible guest. As we do every single week, we're out on the hunt for leaders who are really great at what they do. They've been at it for a couple of decades or more, and they're willing to share some of their storylines with you to see if they help. They're leaders in science and technology, pharma and innovation, and we bring them in. I grill them a little bit on their storylines and see what kind of wisdom they can drop for you to accelerate your goals. Today, I'm thrilled to have the founder of EPL, Entrepreneurial Performance Labs. Welcome to the show, Buck Bradberry.
Hi, Cindy.
It's great to see you.
Great to see you.
I want to highlight one of the pieces you mentioned to me off the air, that you are 3 decades in on the psychology of entrepreneurship and executive talent and how those two areas overlap. So I have no question, no doubt that today's going to be a great conversation about those intersections, because I know you work with clients who are interested in those items as I do. So thanks for coming on today. Tell us how you got into this. It's kind of a niche sort of a thing. What's your background? Where are you from? Give us your intro.
Okay. I got into this. Just to go way back, I graduated as a pre-med student.
Wow.
And started playing music, started a band after college.
Nice.
Did that for a couple of years. And then I got into a counseling role. I fell in love. And so I kind of gave up the music.
Okay.
And
medical student, music, I mean, those things go hand in hand.
Yeah, you're going to try a lot of things, right? So once I was married, I got a job working as a youth counselor with troubled youth. And I loved the work. And but it was a easy, quick burnout kind of profession.
Yes.
There weren't many people in the what we did who were over 28 years old. They just kind of burned out. So I went back to school, got a grad degree in psychology, and just kind of fell in love with the idea of organizational psychology.
Okay.
And I've worked with an external consulting firm for a little while, doing process consulting, basically organizational behavior kind of work, and then joined a big bank, the 4th largest bank in the U.S.
Wow.
And was there 5-6 years doing all kinds of interesting work. We were doing a lot of M&A acquisition. This bank did 86 acquisitions over 20 years.
Wow.
Essentially growing through acquisition. And I did a lot of internal consulting work. I assessed and developed leaders and executives within the company, and did all kinds of strategy work, culture work, etc. But I knew that I wanted to go out and do my own thing. And so started my own consultancy about 20 years ago now.
Okay.
And so I've had a foot in two worlds. One is in the larger corporate, mature company world. Fortune 500, Global 100 kinds of companies that doing executive assessment, executive development work. And I caught the entrepreneurship bug, not only because I had made the entrepreneurial leap, but I had clients who had. And one particular client grew an incredible business, a venture from a blank sheet of paper, sold the venture in 3 years for
really
a couple $100 million, but became part of an even larger, ended up as part of HSBC.
You're kidding. Oh my gosh. That's
so
amazing.
Unbelievable ride. I was consulting and coaching to that team.
Cool.
But after the exit, I became intrigued with why did that work so well? Because we know that most ventures don't succeed,
right?
Frankly. And so I did a learning history. I sat down with this founder and all the other people involved, ended up with about 200 pages of interview transcripts.
Wow.
Pages, which led me to a deeper dive. I said, there's so much. It was a wonderful culture. They were a talent magnet. They did so much right from a leadership perspective.
Okay. That's awesome.
And I thought, this content is really valuable. I wonder how it applies outside financial services. And so I did a deep dive, just an immersive study, asking the question, what separates those ventures that succeed from those that fail?
Yes. Oh, great.
And Cindy, it took me really into this root cause, at least for me, that was interesting, which is about what I call the psychology of entrepreneurship. The psychology of the startup process.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, having worked with so many of those founders myself, primarily at least and initially on the pitch itself, there's a lot happening. And then, later on now we kind of run classes on a frequent basis just to help those leaders in some of the regions or areas you're talking about, right? Like just mindset, how to behave like a CEO, how to build a culture from just 4 people on the team, And so, I really want to dive into all of this, Buck, but I have one question from earlier that I just would love your opinion on. Organizational psychology, organizational communication, organizational health. What was the term that you used early on? And can you define, I know what that is, it's like coming into an organization and making sure it's healthy but what are some of the questions that are on the table that an organizational communications expert can come in and answer?
That's a great question.
Okay.
And actually, the process consulting side of it, I think I mentioned that earlier, which is about not necessarily having the answers, but coming in with the right questions and the right process to help leaders and teams and organizations make the best use of the expertise they already have. I mean, they're in the thick of it. They know the business. I mean, of course, there are times when an outside expert can come in with some very specialized knowledge. But by and large, that kind of organization development piece is about assessment. And I love assessment work.
Yeah, you do. We're going to talk about that.
Leadership assessment work. But it's helping to objectively and systematically gather data about what's actually happening in the organization. How much alignment is there around some very basic questions about direction? Do we know where we're going?
Right.
Talent. Do we have the right people on the team?
In the right seats.
Right seats. Culture, values, motivation, morale. And, there's an entire set of industries really with all kinds of tools and solutions around that entire field.
Okay.
Where I've gone over the years is niching down more and more into more one-on-one work.
Okay.
I love, it used to be organization was the unit of analysis.
Yep.
Then it was team. And now I focus mainly on individual.
You like the one-to-one. Okay. And why is that? Yeah. Tell me more.
Yeah. I'm somewhat of an introvert. And I have a mad scientist side of me, and I have a counselor side of me.
Yeah.
And those come together in a neat way when I'm working one-on-one. You know, I'm thinking about the passion piece exercise.
Yes.
You
Yep, we
have
do that.
led some of us through, you know,
Yeah,
in the mastermind group. But
that's right.
I love the connecting with a person, with a client,
Mm-hmm.
and um, extending complete acceptance, warts
Mm-hmm.
and all.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah,
extending, you know,
exposed. Mm-hmm.
that unconditional positive regard,
Mm-hmm.
and in a way that builds trust and is disarming.
Yeah.
And the reason that's important, especially for assessment work, leadership assessment work, is that it can be intimidating.
Yes, it
You know,
is. It is.
any
I was actually just on the phone with a team member in a Fortune 250 organization. You would
Mhm.
know them if I told you. And there's
Mhm.
a 360 assessment, on the table about how this leader is doing, um, and those are valuable in so many ways because they put numbers to feelings or
Mm.
viewpoints in a sense. And I wonder if you could explore that for any in the listening or viewing audience who might either not know a lot about the value of assessments or who might question it because it is,
Mm.
it's a very first of all, there are so many assessments that have come to for the last 10, 15 years or so. I
Yeah.
can speak to one that I took about 8 years ago that I loved. It was called Emergenetics. I don't know if you're
Mm.
familiar with that, but it's kind
Mm.
of like a 360 on steroids in my
Mhm.
opinion, or that's how it was sold to me. But it was really valuable. But what do you say to folks about the value of assessment, especially if they're a little, uh, you know, leery.
Yeah, I mean, it's natural to be skeptical. We're asking these leaders that we assess to take an honest look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a normal mirror, it's a dressing room mirror.
Mm.
So you're seeing yourself from all angles,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, okay,
as
gotcha.
others see you as well. And so
Yeah.
it's you're bound to see some things that aren't as pretty as you'd hoped.
Yeah.
And so there's a natural wariness.
Yeah.
And I guess there are two levels to that, you know, in thinking about your question, Cindy. One is getting past that wariness. I mean, one is just not understanding what it is,
Right.
which I can get to in a
And why
second.
we do it. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the trust building, you know, it's really about two things. Um, the first thing I say, the first words out of my mouth with any new client, or actually any new prospect that could
Mm-hmm.
become a client,
Mm-hmm.
is, "Hey, before we start, I just want to be really clear. I take the confidentiality
Mm-hmm.
of our relationship and these conversations very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, you, the client, you're free to share whatever you want with anybody
Right.
you want.
Good.
But
Yeah.
we need to build. I need for you to not feel like you need to be
Yeah.
editing
Right. I
anything you're saying."
totally agree. And we roll
Yeah,
with the same level as well here. Yeah.
yeah, that's part of the wariness.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's about pure clarity about what the process involves,
Yep.
what it yields, what are the outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
what are the expectations, how we're going to work together, what are the
Mm-hmm.
steps,
Yep.
all of that. And it helps the person, the client, move from a little bit of fear
Mm-hmm.
really to fascination.
Mm.
And
From
it's like,
fear to fascination.
this is
Sounds
going
like
to
a
be
good book
fun.
title. Yeah. Oh, there's
Because
another F word.
yeah, I mean, especially in, you know, you work in the tech world,
Yeah.
startup world quite a bit,
Mhm.
but any senior executive in a decent sized organization, they love data typically.
Yes. Those analytic-minded folks love those
Yeah.
numbers. Mm.
And so that fascinating process is, how do you bring the puzzle pieces together in a way that tells a story
Yes.
about this leader? And, you know, the why, and one thing I would say about people who don't know much about assessment or maybe
Mhm.
wary of them is that they're not all created equal.
Okay.
They're not perfect. No
Mhm.
single assessment tool is perfect. And the
Mhm.
way I like to
Right.
think about it, if you think about a personality assessment, like the
Mhm.
Hogan, which we use, or MBTI, or any of these,
Mhm.
if you think of personality as being like a house, and you're trying to understand the blueprint of the house, the structure of your personality,
right?
Any tool is like looking in one window of the house. It gives you a view, but you can't see the entire house.
Yeah. Okay.
And
That
so
helps.
our process always involves multiple assessments and tools. It involves some personality testing, some 360 feedback from people we work with, stakeholders, an understanding of the context. What does the business need from you at this point?
I love that.
And that all comes together in that storyline, and helping the leader own that and really figure out what are the most relevant, compelling, actionable insights am I getting from this, and what am I going to do about it?
Right. Yes. And to go with the analogy you shared earlier, Buck, around the dressing room mirror, which has many angles, it's similar to the analogy that I'll often use about, it could be about the speaker I'm working with or the leader I'm working with, or it could be about their message, the argument we're making. But I think of a disco ball also, as far as like, now that's a lot more mirrors, but those are mirrors. The disco ball is made up of, I don't know, hundreds of mirrors. And when the light shines on it, it changes color and it creates patterns and it lights up. And so I think of people and messages each as their own little disco balls. And I think about how, when we're working on a message that needs to hit the board of directors because of these certain reasons at this time in our world, and in light of these changes of the organization, which disco mirrors are we going to shine the light on the closest while the other side of it can stay, like isn't needed? So, and how do we want to plan that? Because there are so many facets to us as people, and as a message, we don't always need to hit so much data. And so those mirrors can just wait until Q&A, right? But we might want to shine on the story part first. So I wonder if you could share, let's stay with the storyline theme here for a second, on how an assessment is like a person's story, unfolds a person's storyline, right? Can you help people maybe not very familiar with all these assessments? Are there like core assessments that give us the biggest puzzle pieces to a person? Or how do you think about which concoction is correct for a person?
Yeah. Well, we all have our tools, our preferred tool kits, and we use a straightforward, consistent process.
Okay.
It's very systematic, but what I love about it as well is it's science and art.
Yes.
You're gathering, it's a systematic way of gathering objective data points, and you're bringing seasoned judgment to it. I've done over 1,000 of these executive assessments over the,
oh my gosh,
well, just like you you see universal patterns that repeat themselves, and then each person is unique in some ways. But what we're trying to do, so the Hogan assessment is the personality assessment series that we use. And over 3 assessments, it generates 28 data on 28 dimensions of personality.
Okay.
And it gets at 3 levels. One has to do with your kind of forward typical personality, the way others might experience you. We call it the bright side. There's what we call the dark side, which are 11 strengths of personality that can be overblown at extreme levels. They become derailers. The
dark side, yes.
The dark side, yeah.
The dark side of the disco ball, right?
Yeah, great point. And I was thinking about, with that analogy, is it's really important to understand what song is playing.
Yes. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. How fast are the lights needing to shine? We could go all over it on this one.
Yeah, I'll date myself with the Bee Gees and Donna Summer. And then the other piece, the other 10 dimensions of personality have to do with motivators. What may be beneath the waterline. They aren't as apparent to other people, but they're really important in terms of what gets us out of bed in the morning.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And,
Because
a lot
people
of
don't.
times when you're, well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say people don't advertise how they're motivated. They probably don't even know exactly what motivates them until we
Mhm.
are asked the question, like, what does drive you? Money, fame,
Yeah.
helping others, just there's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 core categories based on what
Mhm.
I've read that
Mhm.
motivate people. And it's kind of a weird question, if I could be honest. It's like, well, what
Mm.
if I'm just imagining, like, well, what if I am motivated by money? Does that make
Mhm.
me a bad person? It's like,
Right.
no, because guess what, everybody? I am motivated by money, partly because I
Mhm.
have 4 children to put through college. And so I guess
Yeah.
that's a transition to I'm motivated by elevating my children. So to do that, I need money, right? And so
Mhm.
there are some, I think choosing what you're motivated by can be a weird experience. At least that's been
Mhm.
my experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And the way these have been structured, these assessment tools, you're not directly saying I'm motivated by this or that.
mhm.
It's a series of questions that have been correlated
Okay.
over time. People who answer the assessment in the way that you do or did
Mhm. Mhm.
tend to um, display these motivations or be
Okay.
driven
I
by these
see.
motivations. But
Okay.
it's you know, I like to think of it as motivation as both a trait
Mhm.
and a state.
Mm.
And so for entrepreneurs, for example, um, if you're motivated by money, if that's the reason you want to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
uh, you need to be aware that
You gotta wake up.
it may be a while
It's gonna be
before
a while. Oh my
you'll
gosh.
get ready
Okay,
for not much money.
Buck, let me fold in the lights here for a second,
Mm,
the lights system, because I think I have a good way to think through that with the assessment piece. And then I do want to return to this 200 pages of data you collected from that one entrepreneur, because I have a
mhm.
few questions about that and then how that kind of lends to what you're
Yeah.
doing now and who you work with. But as our audience, most of them know, the red lights and the green lights, they have a meaning. That's why we have a name for the
Mhm.
podcast. And I think for you and your people, they're very simple. It's just red lights are things or barriers that prevent us from getting further on in in my world, it's your persuasive argument needs to hit to that green light with your audience, right? So that you can get
Mhm.
them to go. And so we're always trying as speakers or as business owners to move audiences from the red light of risk to the green light of go through any means we can think of
Mhm.
persuasively. And so art and science is what you said kind of assessments are, and that's what rhetoric is. Rhetoric is the art and science of persuasion. So
Mm.
let's just take the use case of people you've helped one-to-one who are approaching an engagement with you, and maybe you can help us see some of the red lights that people might come to that engagement with that make them feel leery about the assessment, but also just maybe like going so deep with a coach, right? What are some red light things that over your last 30 years you've seen as barriers that they come with?
Yeah, I
Mindset,
think
usually, I would imagine it's mostly mindset stuff like fears.
yeah, it's mindset, but it also I think can get very specific in terms of clarity. You know,
Mm,
it's we all come into a new relationship with assumptions about what this is going to be or
mm,
an
sure.
engagement. So I'm engaging a coach or my boss has put me onto this executive assessment
Yeah. What do they want to
train.
know? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I was thinking earlier today about your red light, green light concept. And just in general, what I've seen in some of my clients, and this may not be the answer you're looking for,
Mm, there's no
but
wrong answer.
um, in trying to effectively persuade or pitch or communicate
Hmm.
to their organizations or to
Yeah.
anyone, actually,
Yeah.
the thing I see again and again is too much content.
Oh, for sure.
You know,
Easy,
just
too much.
yeah, I mean, one of the CEOs I've been working with asked me to review an agenda for a 2-day offsite with a bunch of leaders.
Yeah.
And it was, Cindy, it was about a day and a half made up of about 20 PowerPoint presentations.
Oh my gosh.
They're basically readouts.
Yikes.
And these were in
Documents
person.
that are in PowerPoint. Like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. So, we went through the process of just talking through, what can you do only with people in the room?
Right.
Versus what can be shared asynchronously.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
And then how
Great
do you
question.
challenge each presenter? First, cut down the number of presenters.
Yes. Holy smokes.
Challenge the presenters to, and you're the expert in this.
Mm-hmm.
What are the 2 or 3 messages max you want to cut through the smoke for the listeners, and engage the group with those messages in a way that generates new insights versus just readouts. Right?
Well, yeah, it's like the 10% message. That's what we shared that yesterday in a post, and it's like I do the same thing, Buck. When I've worked with a lot of leaders on not just presentation flow, but day flow of days long conferences. Like, what's the flow of the conference? And that's exactly what you're saying. And the question is still the same, whether you're talking about a presentation or a day long workshop, day full of workshop. What is the 10% message you hope that everybody who comes today to this room leaves with? And then how are we going to plant signposts that lead them to leave and get in their cars and think about the 10% message? Because guess what, friends? That's all you get. And it's depressing, I know, but the 10% message better be juicy. But you got to think of that ahead, right? And to your point, it's like, well, what do we want them to leave with? It's not what 10% do we want to deliver to them that we hope sticks. It's like, what do we want them to definitely take away? And that requires repetition and repeating in different ways at different hours of the of the day.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So
that gets one of the green light pieces, which is the power of repetition.
Yes. We need to hear things over and over and over. We're like children that way. So keep going with this. So you got this CEO to kind of trim it back, and so too much content, definitely a red light.
And the other piece is, well, and evangelize. The red light is content without connection.
Yes.
And so it's
brilliant.
A bunch of people show up into a room. Somebody starts a presentation right off the bat. Somebody's wondering when the bathroom break is. Did the kids get to school? Can I text something under the table?
Of course they will.
Physically present, but not psychologically.
Right. And that's the part you kind of get after.
Yeah, right. And there are all kinds of ways to connect and engage people briefly without a lot of, touchy-feely.
Well, that's what in our model, the how-to model, hook me, orient me, win me, tell me more, and offer me. Those are the 5 commands, I would argue, that our audiences ask for us to satisfy with our messages when we have a formal message we're delivering. And that first letter O, the orient me, that's where the connection happens. So, a hook in a presentation is very quick. It's 10 seconds or less usually. And then the O is where we connect with a story, a short story. And then we kind of move across the bridge to the real meat of the presentation, where we bring our proposition. That's the W, win me over. What are you bringing today? And then the T is the longest period of time in that presentation. The tell me more, tell me the detail, but not too much. And then offer me something to do at the end. What do you want me to do? That's the ask, right? And so, that engagement piece that you're speaking to, Buck, is the O, that first O. Orient me with a story, or maybe an exercise in a day long, day full of presentations. So, no, that makes sense.
Critical.
Yes. Okay. Do you want to go back a step to this 200 pages with me and share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. And it's interesting. One of the green light leaders,
sure.
I'll just say, was that
Yeah,
leader.
yeah. Oh, great. Did he do it? He did what you asked him to?
Well, I didn't have to ask him. He's a very sophisticated,
Excellent.
enlightened
Oh,
leader,
good.
I would say, and an
Those are the best
entrepreneur.
ones.
He's almost a natural.
Great.
And yeah, so, basically through all of that data gathering, um, I became fascinated with, in the deeper dive, the psychology of entrepreneurship. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it was about the passion, entrepreneurial passion, which
Mm-hmm.
is so necessary
Yes.
because everything takes longer, costs more than you think it's going to, yada,
Yes.
yada.
Yes.
It's also can be a huge liability. It can
Mm-hmm.
be a
Yeah.
barrier. It
Yep.
has a downside, a dark side.
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And, that essentially is what I wrote a book about. And, that led me into working with a lot of early stage founders, a lot of early idea stage businesses.
Okay.
And it
Back
was
of the
fun.
napkin.
It is fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And,
Mm-hmm.
some of them had investment, but most did not. And I still
Right.
do work with some business schools related to their entrepreneurship programs,
Okay.
which are
Nice.
usually very early stage if
Mm-hmm.
or aspiring, entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But that kind of work didn't scale very
Yeah,
well.
no, I've been there. I did that.
Right?
It does not.
Yeah. And I describe it as like watching 15 cable channels at one time with 15
Yes.
different remotes.
Yes. 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 Oh gosh.
And, and meanwhile, I was doing this larger corporate work, which
Okay. So you're kind of doing
was
both. Mm-hmm.
more profitable, let's say.
Yes. Yes.
And where I was able to bring those together, where we were focused now, is on this notion of a growth leader,
Okay.
which is any leader, typically a CEO or an executive who needs to step up and lead on a larger
Mm-hmm.
stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be because they've just gotten a bunch of capital, a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
private equity or growth equity
Mm-hmm.
funding,
Okay.
and they may be way out over their skis because
Yep.
they're a founder who bootstrapped this thing, and now they've got this
Mm-hmm.
seasoned team and all that comes with needing to operationalize and execute.
Yep. Yep.
Or an executive who's stepping up into a larger role in a corporate setting,
Mm-hmm.
larger
Mm-hmm.
corporate setting, who is in the same sense needing to shed some old behaviors
Yep.
or assumptions
Yep.
and pick up some new skills. And from a growth perspective, ideally, the clients we love working with are ones that are charged with growing, a P&L or a business or
Sure. Sure.
um, and so that's kind of where we are now. And it's kind of
Okay.
bringing together the best of executive
Mm-hmm.
mindset, acumen with the best of entrepreneurial mindset
Yep.
and skill set.
Okay. So it sounds like we both bring leaders from like 1.0 to 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
but you're doing it more from that lens of an assessment and some of those skills that are, I don't know if I would maybe broader, more broadly, doing that more broadly. Whereas when I come in and do that and we do use that language, like I'm going to get you to your 2.0 kind of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
we do that through the lens of communication skills, executive communications, and messaging so that you
Mm-hmm.
can actually do the things that Buck says you should do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll teach you the words to say, right? And the stories to tell. So there's kind of an interesting
Mm-hmm.
collaborative nature to the two of us as we look at how we help leaders, because I frequently will follow on to a person who does the type of work that you do. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, I've set this leader up. They know their stuff, their strengths, their weaknesses. They're executing on a lot of that. Oh, and they have this big presentation coming up. And that's a zone for a scalpel level coach like us. That's kind of how we often will plug in. So those are great. But it's
Yeah.
so great to do this work when someone like you has already come in and cleaned the house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we're going to go with the house analogy. So, Buck, what do you love most about your time with your clients? Like what like supercharges you about this work?
Well, I love the connection, the trust
Mm-hmm.
building. I love the puzzle pieces coming together, the art and
Mm-hmm.
science part of it, and shoulder to shoulder partnering with a client to really help them make sense
Mm-hmm.
of the data and the feedback,
Mm-hmm.
because they
Yeah.
have to own it.
Yep.
You know,
Totally.
I'm not here permanently, or
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of side by side, helping them through the process. And this gets back to your earlier question, I think, about what are some red lights that people may experience or clients may experience, or
Mm-hmm.
hesitancies
Yep.
they'll have.
Yeah.
And one of them is just not, they can be overwhelmed by the
Sure.
amount of data, because
Yes.
we're really trying to piece together a holistic picture. And so helping them simplify and distill down to, and that's why we actually use
Yeah.
the term storyline. What is the story?
Yeah. I
What is
love
your
that.
leadership storyline in the data
Yeah.
that
It feels so
informs,
approachable. Mm-hmm.
where you want to go next?
Mm-hmm.
And um, I'm not talking about leadership brand, because I
Mm-hmm.
think, that's all good, well and good, but the brand idea tends to involve ego, and I don't mean ego in a purely negative sense, but that part of us that wants to look, the
Yeah.
part of us that wants to be seen in a positive light by the world,
Sure. Absolutely.
which actually could get in the way of development. And so it's
Yes.
kind of like, what's your leadership story right now in terms of where you've been, where you are,
Mm-hmm.
where you're going, how you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get there, how your strengths play into that, where
Yep.
are the gaps, what are you
Yep.
going to do about it?
Right.
And, once we get through all the data synthesis,
Yep.
then it's really about that. It's about, what am I going to do? What do I need to do differently?
Yes.
And,
How do I do this differently? Yeah. Where are the tools?
and where we intersect, I think often, or should be, is, clearly communication is such an important leadership skill at
Mm-hmm.
all phases of a
Mm-hmm.
business, at all phases
Mm-hmm.
of growth.
Yep.
And, you know, uh, sometimes, and, you know, I don't know the percentage of times, but a lot of leaders that we work with, particularly in technology, are
Mm.
challenged in communication,
Oh my gosh. Yes.
right?
Sorry. I don't mean to
Yeah.
laugh, but it's so true because they're so good at their numbers and Excel charts, and that's their passion. And not only does their brain not naturally go into that realm, which is normal and expected, but they also have not generally been trained almost ever on any of those kinds of skills. I mean, they might have taken a public speaking class if it was mandated in high school or
Mhm.
college, but you better know they didn't like choose public speaking in their undergraduate or
Mhm.
graduate degrees. They don't, why would they? I mean, there's maybe a
Mhm.
few, right? And they're astute and smart to know they need that skill, but most don't gravitate toward that, aren't pushed toward it till later, till they become
Mhm.
a leader and they need
Right.
to persuade with, you know, they need to persuade stakeholders about their genius. So
Mhm.
that doesn't come naturally, friends, right? And so I did kind of, that kind of lends to the question. I have two more questions for you, Buck.
Yeah.
One is around the passion piece that you drafted when I did that work with
Mhm.
you in the group, and for the audience to know what that is. A passion piece is a piece that we developed. It's ours that we kind of innovated by accident, which is a whole story in itself. But a passion piece is the articulation of your specific zone of brilliance, what you are uniquely gifted at doing. And it is a string of sentences that starts, and every sentence starts with I love. And that's by
Mhm.
design because we must put things after those two words, I love? We must put things after those words that we really actually love. Not just like, not just a little this or that. And so it's a beautiful exercise. It really forces leaders to identify their brilliance. And it becomes, I learned this after doing this a little while, it becomes like an encyclopedia of you. And it's like its own assessment, but there's no numbers, Buck. So I'm not going to get, a little booklet for people to fill out, like a blue booklet, I'm sure. But, anyway, that's just a quick explanation for people listening. I just want to know what your unique gifting is in your mind.
Well, I've got some of what I wrote down here.
Awesome. Well, if you're so willing to share a few of those things, I would love to hear.
I can't help thinking about the movie Sideways.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Love that movie.
The scene with Virginia Madsen.
Yes.
Talking about why she loves wine so much.
Oh.
For me, I've said some of this already, but particularly helping a person move from confusion, uncertainty, or hesitancy to clarity and hope. I love that the lighting up in their eyes, the nodding in their head, the instilling of hope, really.
Yeah.
Because
beautiful.
There's go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say you have I think a lot of your gifting falls into your disposition. You're calm, collected, even. Apparently, and I've experienced this, but if you've been able to collect 200 pages from one person from a deep listening exercise, you're clearly a phenomenal listener who also can collect information and pull themes and distill it. And if you're able to do that from a person, gosh, the benefits to talking with you are, more than we can count. So it's sometimes hard for people to understand what their zone of brilliance is until they might ask others in their circles. And we do an inner circle exercise, which is like, go find 10 people who know you and love you, like inside of, who really love you from a work perspective and believe in you and are your mentors and are going to be honest. And then pick a few people in your personal life. And I've got a list of 5 questions. I want to hear their mirror on the disco ball about you. And it's like the most soaring experience, Buck, for people to read those answers. Oh, there's tears usually. Like, I can't believe people think this about me. This is so beautiful. I didn't know this. And it shows them this amazing reflection of how others see their brilliance. And for some people, it's the first time they've heard those things because they've never even done much reflection about that at all.
So important.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Do you have any more to share about your passion bees before I go to my next question? Was there anything lingering?
No, I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
It's the relationship part and the passage.
Yep.
Figuratively holding someone's hand.
Yeah.
Through this passage to, okay, these are the next 2 major opportunities I have in terms of elevating my leadership effectiveness. And I know how I'm going to do it.
The process of becoming is what you're kind of ushering along. So, well, on that note, my last question is around a person in your life, Buck, who has helped you through the process of becoming, or maybe guided you onto this path. Or I like to ask about a person who maybe you didn't realize in the moment that they were doing this nudging for you or this pivoting. I mean, sometimes it's very obvious, but sometimes we don't realize until later in life how someone helped us. So who is someone that you'd like to name today and share?
Yeah. I mean, there's personal and professional, and those 2 blend, of course. But I'm thinking professionally in terms of the arc. And it's really the leader I was talking about, the entrepreneur. His name's J.C. Faulkner.
Okay.
And he's actually a good friend as
Mm-hmm.
well. He's involved as a financial partner in, one of the businesses I have.
Okay. Awesome.
But the fact that he was open, willing, and inviting for me to support him in getting that business off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then after it sold, patiently sitting down with me and us documenting the story of what happened.
Yeah. What a gift.
What a gift. And that unlocked for me
Ugh.
this journey
Yeah.
into, so much perspective, data gathering,
Yeah.
and hopefully value creation
Oh, yeah.
for others around, um, what really makes an effective entrepreneur tick.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, it
And then, of
really
course,
seems to have landed you on the trajectory that you're continuing on in terms of now you had this incredible in-depth research that you did, independent research, and then you were able to suss out the themes that you would like to help other leaders build, right? And how you would
Mhm.
kind of guide them toward the same sorts of insights. Um, did you say his name is Jack? I'm sorry for
JC Faulkner.
JC. Well, JC, I know you're going to be listening to this eventually, so I just want to thank you for all the
Yeah.
help that you provided to Buck, and it would be great to see how you're flourishing. That's just incredible. Well, I always use that as a jumping off point to say to everyone listening, who in your life can you tell something great to today? And can you compliment out loud and with, this is important, with specificity? It's not quite enough, in my opinion, to say that was a great job. Why was it a great job? How about you looked so confident when you told that story and the smile on your face just said it all. That kind of
Yeah.
feedback is so much different than you did a great job. So go give some specific feedback today, friends. And if you can think of a person who turned your path toward greatness, go thank them too, because there's nothing more exhilarating than hearing that you've helped to change someone's path in a positive way. And I believe that's that reason that we're all here in the first place. So, yeah. But this has been incredible. Do you have a place? Well, first of all, tell us the name of your book so we can end on that note so we can pick it up. What's the name of your book?
Well, it's dated, and we're going to be in the process of refreshing it,
Okay,
actually.
awesome.
I was able to get the rights back from the publisher, and the title is a publisher title, which I was aiming for a different one, but the title is 6 Secrets of Startup Success.
Okay. That's easy to remember, lots of S's.
Right, yeah. But really, it's about something I call the passion trap. It's about ensuring that your passion works for you.
Yes.
And not against you.
Ooh, that's
building something great.
I think can you rename the book? Because that seems like a grabber.
I do think so.
That's awesome. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Buck, for coming on the show. How can people find you? Where's the best place?
LinkedIn. And I would say eplabs.co.
Okay.
eplabs.co.
Fantastic. Well, it's been such a pleasure to walk through this journey with you today, Buck, and learn more about organizational communications and storytelling through assessment and the psychology of entrepreneurism and executive talent and communications. So this has been a pleasure. Thanks for being here.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, good. Well, everybody, that's it for today. We're going to wrap today's episode and bring you another amazing guest next week. In the meantime, while you are going out into the world doing your thing, see who in one of your next audiences, whether one or many, you might be able to bring from the red light of risk to the green light of go before our next episode drops. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for listening.